Hey everybody. Well, that was what ended up being a good week finally. It didn't feel like that until 30 minutes ahead of the close, but a nice finish to the week. Who knows where we'll be next week? But in case you missed it, Marijuana Moment broke a story about a potential uh, legalization bill to be introduced by Republicans in the House, and rather interesting because if you recall the prior legislation, which I deemed dead on arrival, worried people because of two issues. Number one, a pretty high rate of taxation. This is a very small excise tax. And then number two, the reliance upon the FDA. This proposed legislation has a very limited FDA role. So all in all, we ended up with a rally for the week, mainly because of that action in the last few minutes. The index ended up increasing, I forget exactly what it was, but about 2%, something like that for the week. Maybe a little bit less, 1.8%. It was funny because I was writing my weekly review. I had everything all set for, another decline, and it ended up being better. So that's really where the market was. It was a really interesting week as we kicked off earnings season. I'll go over our exclusive content after I go over the headlines. But just going into the headlines, again, we publish news on capital raises, on financial reporting, and M&A. I don't think we had any M&A this week. I'll go through all those, but we kicked off earnings season, and I'll start with those. So first of all, what a stench out of Smiths Falls. Canopy Growth, not Canopy Rivers. Canopy Growth had an absolutely horrible report, and it paid the price. The stock paid the price, falling a little bit more than I thought it would, honestly. And the stock's pretty beaten up technically. You can debate about the valuation, but it's certainly, I think you can have a debate now. In the past, I told my subscribers at 420 Investor was just way overvalued. I think it's expensive, but not way overvalued. But anyway, that was a pretty bad report. They had miscues all over the place, and they have one of the interesting things about Canopy is that they have a diverse line of businesses, but with the exception of US CBD, they all stunk. The retail sales, their stores in Canada actually fell from a year ago. Their B2B business, as they call it, their adult use cannabis business, if you strip out acquisitions, it fell from a year ago. This isn't a growing market. Then you look at, one bright spot was their vaporizer business, Storz and Bickel. It fell pretty sharply from a year ago. Then you look at their international business, again, down from a year ago. So, the emperor has no clothes, let's face it. I'll move on. So that was one obvious piece of news that we reported. And there was some M&A. I'll get to that in a minute. The other one was Scott's Miracle-Gro. And I'm just looking for that one. Canopy? Wow. Maybe I forgot that one. Interesting. How did I forget that one? We got a little problem here. I have to pause. Hold on a sec here. Hilarious. So we didn't forget it. I cut and paste. I took a screenshot and I just lopped it off. So Scott's Miracle-Gro reported, and it's funny. I had told my subscribers at 420 Investor that I thought their Hawthorne sales would miss, and they did. But the good news for Scott's Miracle-Gro investors was that their core business, the lawn and garden business, did better than expected. The company gave guidance for this coming fiscal year, fiscal 22, ending in September, and it was a little bit stronger than expected. So that stock's been really beaten up, and it rebounded. So that was this second one. And then the third one was Innovative and Industrial Properties, posted record numbers. And so those links are all there for the financial reports. So I was wrong. There were actually, so on the capital raise, let's do that one first. XS Financial, which does equipment leasing, They work with a lot of the MSOs, and so this is, a little bit different than sale leaseback, obviously, but it serves the same function. This is allowing cannabis operators who don't want to put all their capital into equipment to be able to finance it. And so I was pretty impressed. I've been following this company for a while. It's actually publicly traded, and they really finally have some traction. Kudos to those guys. And they raised $43.5 million through a convertible note. This was, I'm not going to weigh in on the stock at all. I don't even know where it trades, honestly. But for the company, this was really big news. And for the industry, I think it's important news as well. So there were a couple of M&A deals that we included in the newsletter as well. The first one was Flora Growth, which that's a Colombian producer. They're paying $30 million in a combination of cash and stock to buy a consumption accessory company. So that was the first one. And then the second one I thought was interesting, and I got to tell you, Goodness Growth seemed to get knocked on Twitter for this. I'm going to take a more supportive view, but they sold their dispensary in Phoenix, Arizona that they acquired a couple of years ago called Arizona Natural Remedies. They've rebranded it, I believe, to Green Goods, but they sold it for $15 million to Copper State Farms. And, we've interviewed Copper State Farms in the past, and part of their growth strategy is to, they have a big cultivation facility, but part of their growth strategy is to have more retail. And so, like I said, I think people were knocking it on Twitter, what I saw. I didn't see any analyst reports, but I thought this continued the trend of that company being pretty prudent capital allocators. And so that $15 million that they'll receive can be invested into their operations in their core states, which I consider to be certainly New York and Minnesota and Maryland. They will continue to operate in Arizona. They worked it out so that they can continue to cultivate biomass there. So I thought it was an interesting deal. So that was all the press releases, the curated press releases that we ran. And as I always mention, our newsletter, our publication at New Cannabis Ventures, we run some exclusive news. It tends to be, for the most part, reviews of revenue, our revenue tracker, that's one. Reviews of the indices on a monthly update. We manage 7 indexes, and each month we provide a summary of kind of what happened during the month. And of course we have usually 2, sometimes 1, but usually 2 interviews with industry operators and investors, and we had 2 this week. And then I also run, when we have market data, like we did this week in Illinois, I tend to write about that as well. So this is the type of exclusive news that we run. I feel like I might be missing one, but I think that nailed it. So just hitting those exclusive news items this week. So first of all, as I mentioned, speaking of markets, so BDSA covers, I think it's like 9 or 10 markets now across the country, 5 in the West and then several in the East. And all 5 Western markets in September, all 5 Western markets showed year-over-year declines. And this continues a trend that we've been seeing weakness in the West. And so that data is all there in that article. And then all the markets in the East, except for Florida, showed sequential declines from August into September. Now, you should see sequential declines potentially anyway, just due to the day count, and there's some seasonals as well potentially. But that's a pretty comprehensive piece that gives you a breakdown of what's going on in the cannabis space from a bigger picture. Again, we've been talking about this a lot in New Cannabis Ventures over the last year. That we were going to face very tough comparisons in the summer. And as we head into earnings season with Curaleaf reporting on Monday, just something to keep in mind. I think people are well aware of this, but this quarter is going to be probably the toughest quarter for the MSOs on the organic growth front. The good news for MSOs is it's not all about same-store sales. It's about additional production capacity. It's about new stores. It's about entering new states. It's about M&A. All right, the second exclusive piece we had was one of the index pieces on the ancillary index. That index dropped 8% in October, which was a little bit better than the overall market, and I gave a breakdown there of the 3 best and 3 worst stocks in that sector. It was interesting because the 3 best stocks in the ancillary space were all REITs. The next piece of exclusive news was one of our interviews, and that was really interesting. Drizzly is spinning out or has spun out Lantern, and Lantern is a relatively new company focused on cannabis delivery. It's a technology company, and we interviewed the CEO there. That was a really interesting conversation. And then the other interview we did was with MedMen's CEO. And a lot of people have written off MedMen and don't care about it. And look, I'm not here to tell you should care about it or not, but it was a very interesting interview. The CEO, Tom Lynch, he has a lot of restructuring history. He was the CEO of Dave's Bridal and another retailer as well, from helping them overcome some of their challenges. So he kind of discussed where MedMen is and where it's headed. For those of you who don't care about MedMen but care about other things, one of the things he talked about in that interview was why they have their foot on the brake for now in Florida. That was kind of an interesting comment. The next piece of exclusive news that we had was about Illinois. And so Illinois puts out their data very quickly, usually the first or second day of the month. And in October, Illinois sales grew 64% compared to a year ago. That's a rate that's good, but it continues to slow down. It was, I believe, up 1% sequentially, if I'm not mistaken, maybe down, but slight change sequentially, up 64% to $123 million. So that continues to be a very successful market. And then, and there's a lot of MSOs operating there, obviously. And then finally, the last exclusive piece that we had was on the overall global cannabis index, which dropped 7.5% so far this year through month end. It was down, I think, 8.8% during the month. So we went from slightly up to down almost double digit. Look, the good news is we've gained back some of it this month so far, but in that piece, again, we talked about some of the best and the worst stocks, but in any event, an update on the broad market. So that was all the links that are in tomorrow's newsletter. Again, we published that newsletter so if you're on the email list, you'll get that email at 8 Eastern or 7 Central where I am. And then we also publish it to our website at, I think at 10, I forget. I think it's at 11 actually, I forget. But we publish it in the morning to the website as well. And so each week, it's my task, our task, to come up with an interesting topic. And I really feel like we've been doing a good job recently, and that's probably why we have 60,000 subscribers with a 22% open rate. This week was over the top, and I don't want to get too much into it. For those of you who follow me on Twitter, you might have seen a post that I made late Friday. This is information I shared with my subscribers at 420 Investor before, but I'll give you the punchline, and I'm not going to get into it. You're going to have to read the article. But I think it's possible that Altria buys Cronos Group this week. And wow, what a game changer that would be. So in the article, I explain why they should buy it, number one. And number two, why I think it could be this week. So it was very interesting. I don't make calls like this very often, so that in and of itself is interesting. And I admit I could be wrong. I don't think there's a lot of downside, by the way, to Cronos if I'm wrong. In other words, nobody is counting on this. It's not in the stock. It made a 52-week low on Friday. But what's interesting is that would be good, right? I mean, if Cronos gets acquired by Altria at a premium, that's good for the Cronos shareholders. But what's really interesting, if that happens, is what it might mean for the rest of the sector. And again, I kind of talk about that in the piece. So I'm going to leave it at that. We've hit the 15-minute mark. We had a great finish to what was a rough week, and hopefully the next few weeks will be better than the last 10 months. Take care, everybody. Have a great week.